Before we begin, subscribe and tell us in the comments what city or country you're watching from. Tonight, a billionaire's fiancé will call a curvy black maid too embarrassing to be seen at a luxury gala, only to discover that the woman she tried to hide is the one person the entire event was created to honor. You're not seriously planning to walk into the ballroom dressed like that. Amara Cole stopped beneath the marble archway of the Wexler Maritime Museum. She was 36, black, curvy, and striking in a midnight blue gown that skimmed her figure instead of hiding it. Her natural curls were swept over one shoulder, and a small silver pin shaped like a lighthouse rested near her collarbone. For 6 years, Amara had worked as senior housekeeper at billionaire Grant Wexler's waterfront estate. Tonight, she was not scheduled to work. She had been invited. But Grant's fiancée, Felicity Dane, stood between Amara and the ballroom as though she were guarding the doors from an intruder. Felicity wore white silk and diamonds. Her eyes moved slowly over Amara. "That dress is very confident." Amara smiled politely. "Thank you." It wasn't a compliment. 2 event assistants nearby suddenly became fascinated by a flower arrangement. Amara held up her invitation. Mrs. Wexler's office sent this personally. Grant's late mother's foundation was hosting the annual Harbor Light Gala, raising money for temporary housing, job training, and emergency support for displaced women. Amara had never attended before. Felicity took the invitation from her hand. She read it. Then laughed. "This must be an administrative mistake. It has my name on it. It says Amara Cole. It does not say household maid. My job title wasn't required." Felicity looked at her again. "Do you understand what tonight is? A fundraiser. A photographed fundraiser." Amara's expression cooled. And people expect a certain image." There it was. Amara had heard softer versions of that sentence her entire life. Too noticeable. Too broad. Too much. Never quite the shape some people thought elegance was supposed to have. She reached for the invitation. Felicity kept it. "You can help downstairs. I'm not working tonight." "You work for Grant. Not 24 hours a day." Felicity's smile tightened. "Amara, I'm trying to save you from embarrassment. Mine or yours?" Felicity stepped closer. "You want the truth. I usually prefer it. You are too embarrassing for this gala." The assistants froze. Amara's face remained still. Felicity continued. "Half the people inside are investors, designers, reporters. You'll stand out for all the wrong reasons." Amara glanced at the mirrored wall beside them. The woman reflected there looked elegant, calm, and completely comfortable. "I think I'll survive. You're a maid. And tonight I'm an invited guest." Felicity tore the invitation cleanly in half. Amara stared at the 2 pieces. "There. Problem solved." "No," Amara said quietly. "You just created a different one." Felicity laughed. "What are you going to do? Complain to Grant?" "No." "Good. I'm going to remember exactly who you are when nobody important is watching." Felicity's smile vanished. Then applause erupted inside the ballroom. Grant Wexler had arrived. At 41, Grant had built one of the largest shipping and logistics companies on the West Coast, but tonight he entered without the usual entourage. He stopped when he saw Amara standing outside the ballroom. Then he saw the torn invitation in Felicity's hand. "What happened?" Felicity answered immediately. "There was confusion with the guest list." Grant looked at Amara. "Were you confused?" "No." Felicity interrupted. She thought the household staff invitation included the main gala. Grant frowned. "There is no household staff invitation." Felicity went pale. He continued. "I sent Amara's personally." Silence. Grant looked at the torn paper. "You destroyed it." She wasn't dressed appropriately. Grant's expression changed. Amara exhaled. "Grant, don't make this bigger than it needs to be." He looked at her. "What did she say?" Amara hesitated. Felicity spoke first. "I said her outfit might attract the wrong kind of attention." One of the assistants finally found her courage. She called Miss Cole too embarrassing for the gala. Felicity turned sharply. Grant said nothing for several seconds. Then he offered Amara his arm. "Come inside." Felicity stepped forward. "Grant." He ignored her. Amara looked at his arm. "I don't need to be escorted." "I know." "Then why are you offering?" His expression softened. "Because I'm about to change the program." That got Felicity's attention. They entered together. Hundreds of guests turned. At the center of the ballroom stood a massive illuminated model of Harbor Haven, the new residential campus the foundation planned to open the following spring. Felicity had spent months giving interviews about it. She had presented herself as the woman who inspired the project. Grant walked directly to the stage. The orchestra stopped. Felicity hurried after them. "Grant, the opening speech is mine." "Not anymore." He took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, there has been a change." Amara stopped near the stage. Grant looked toward her. Tonight's guest of honor was almost prevented from entering this room. Whispers moved through the crowd. Felicity went completely still. Grant continued. "Harbor Haven exists because 12 years ago, during the worst winter storm our city had seen in decades, one woman opened an abandoned church hall and refused to let 37 displaced women sleep outside." Amara's eyes widened. Grant smiled. "She found blankets. She called employers. She convinced landlords to waive deposits. And when the city finally offered funding, she gave the entire program away because she cared more about keeping it alive than having her name attached to it." Felicity stared at Amara. Grant raised his glass. "The original founder of Harbor Haven, Amara Cole." The ballroom erupted. Amara did not move. For 12 years, almost nobody had known. But Felicity's reaction was not merely shock. It was fear. Because behind Grant, the giant presentation screen changed to the Foundation's original incorporation document. Amara looked at it. Her smile disappeared. Someone had altered the file. Her name had been removed from the founding record. In its place was another name. Felicity Dane. And beside it was a signature supposedly written by Amara 12 years earlier, transferring every legal right to the program to Felicity's family. Amara stared at the signature. Then at Felicity. "That isn't mine." Grant slowly turned toward the screen. Felicity backed away. And Amara suddenly understood something far worse than the insult at the door. Felicity had not tried to keep her out because she was embarrassed by how Amara looked. She had tried to keep her out because the real founder was never supposed to see what had been stolen. The applause died almost as quickly as it had begun. Grant stood beneath the giant presentation screen, staring at the forged transfer agreement. Amara did not look at the crowd. She looked only at Felicity. "You knew I founded Harbor Haven." Felicity's lips parted. "I knew you had volunteered there." "No." Amara walked closer. "You knew exactly who I was." Grant stepped down from the stage. "Explain the document." Felicity glanced toward the reporters gathering near the ballroom entrance. "This is not the place. You seemed comfortable making Amara's place the subject of discussion 10 minutes ago." "Grant. Explain it." Felicity's father, Conrad Dane, appeared from the VIP section. He was a silver-haired real estate developer whose company had donated $15 million toward the new Harbor Haven campus. He took one look at the screen and immediately understood the danger. "That document is part of an old charitable restructuring," Conrad said. Amara turned toward him. "You know about it too." "I know there were changes in management. I never transferred Harbor Haven to anyone." Conrad's expression remained smooth. 12 years is a long time. People forget what they sign. Amara laughed once. "Not because anything was funny. I was 24, homeless, working 2 jobs, and sleeping in the storage room of the church where I started Harbor Haven. I remember every piece of paper I signed because every signature mattered." Grant looked at her. "You were homeless?" Amara nodded. "My landlord sold the building. I had nowhere to go for 3 months. And you still opened the shelter. There were women sleeping in cars with children. My situation wasn't special." Something in Grant's face changed. He had known Amara for 6 years. He had known she was capable. He had not known this. Conrad stepped toward the screen. The Dane Foundation provided substantial funding. Years later, Amara replied. After Harbor Haven already existed. Felicity folded her arms. Does it really matter whose name is on an old form? The organization grew because families like mine made it possible. Amara looked at her. It mattered enough for you to keep me outside. Felicity said nothing. Grant turned toward his foundation attorney, Rachel Kim. Freeze tonight's donations. Conrad's calm finally cracked. Excuse me? Nothing moves until we know who legally owns Harbor Haven's founding assets. This gala has commitments worth nearly $40 million. Then $40 million can wait. Rachel approached the stage and examined the transfer agreement on the screen. Where did this file come from? The event director answered. Foundation archive. Who uploaded it? A technician checked the system. User ID FD executive. Everyone looked at Felicity. She shook her head. That account is used by my staff. Grant's expression hardened. Only 2 people have executive credentials. Then someone stole mine. Amara walked toward the screen. Zoom in on the signature. The technician enlarged it. Her forged name appeared at the bottom. Amara studied it. Then she noticed something. Look at the date. Rachel read it aloud. February 16, 2014. Amara nodded. That day I was in St. Louis. Conrad scoffed. You remember where you were 12 years ago on a random February day? It wasn't random. She reached toward the silver lighthouse pin on her dress. My mother died that morning. The room went quiet. I flew home the night before. I stayed there for 6 days. Grant looked at Rachel. Can that be verified? Yes. Conrad's face tightened. Amara continued. My mother's funeral program is still in my apartment. My airline records may exist too. Rachel looked at the agreement again. If Amara can prove she was out of state, this document becomes much harder to defend. Felicity whispered, Dad. Conrad ignored her. Instead, he looked at Amara. You should be careful before accusing people of fraud. Amara met his gaze. You should have thought about that before putting my name on something I never signed. Grant ordered security to preserve every foundation server. The ballroom erupted into whispers. Reporters began posting updates. Within minutes, the gala was no longer about Harbor Haven's new campus. It was about the woman who had been nearly excluded from her own organization. Felicity pulled Grant aside. You are destroying everything over a technicality. A forged signature is not a technicality. Harbor Haven became successful under modern management. That doesn't give you permission to rewrite history. She lowered her voice. You're doing this because you're attracted to her. Grant stared at her. What? Felicity glanced toward Amara. You looked at her the second she walked in. This has nothing to do with how she looks. It always does. Grant's expression became colder. No, Felicity. That is how you think. She flinched. Across the room, Rachel handed Amara a tablet. I searched the foundation records. There's something else. Amara looked down. The original Harbor Haven bank account had been closed 9 years earlier. Its remaining balance, $218,000, had been transferred to a Dane-controlled non-profit called Haven Renewal Initiative. Amara frowned. I've never heard of it. Rachel opened the tax filings. Haven Renewal Initiative had received millions in donations supposedly for emergency housing. But most of the money had gone toward property acquisition. The properties were owned by Dane Development. Grant looked over Amara's shoulder. They were donating to themselves. Rachel nodded. And charging Harbor Haven rent afterward. Amara's face hardened. Women had been turned away from temporary housing because the program claimed it lacked beds. Meanwhile, millions intended for them had been paying rent to Conrad's company. How much? Amara asked. Rachel calculated. Just over $27 million across 9 years. Amara closed her eyes. Felicity had mocked her dress. But this was why she had really been afraid. Amara had not merely been the original founder. She was someone who knew what Harbour Haven was supposed to be. And if she looked closely, the entire financial structure would collapse. Grant faced Conrad. "Did you know?" Conrad smiled faintly. "I know how charitable development works. That wasn't my question. You want housing, land has to be purchased. From your own company? At market rates." Rachel interrupted. Some properties were purchased by Dane Development 3 months before Harbour Haven leased them, then rented to the foundation at nearly double comparable rates. Conrad's jaw tightened. Grant looked at Felicity. "Were you involved?" "No." Amara watched her. Felicity was lying. Not because she looked nervous. Because she had stopped looking at Grant. She was staring at the illuminated Harbour Haven model. Specifically, at a small red-roofed building near the center. Amara followed her gaze. "What is that?" The event architect answered. "The administrative residence." "Residence?" "A private home on the campus." "For whom?" Nobody answered. Rachel opened the project budget. A 12-bedroom waterfront residence had been billed as an executive donor retention facility. Cost, $8.4 million. Owner after completion. Felicity Dane. Amara stared at her. "You built yourself a mansion inside a housing project for displaced women?" Felicity snapped. "It was supposed to host donors. With your name on the deed." Conrad stepped forward. "That arrangement is temporary." Amara laughed in disbelief. Then an elderly woman near the back of the ballroom spoke. "No, it isn't." Everyone turned. She wore a Harbour Haven volunteer badge. Amara recognized her immediately. Mrs. Bell. Dorothy Bell had been one of the first women Amara sheltered in the church hall 12 years earlier. Now 71, she walked slowly toward the stage. "I tried to tell the foundation what they were doing." Felicity's face drained. Dorothy reached into her purse and removed a thick envelope. "They sent me this after I complained." Rachel opened it. Inside was a legal settlement agreement offering Dorothy $50,000 in exchange for never discussing Harbour Haven's property purchases. She had never signed it. Attached was a letter threatening to remove her daughter from foundation-supported housing if she went public. Grant stared at Felicity. "Your signature is on this." Felicity backed away. "That could have been generated by legal." Dorothy shook her head. "You handed it to me yourself." The reporters surged forward. Conrad grabbed Felicity's arm. "We're leaving." Security blocked the ballroom doors. Grant said, "No one leaves until the foundation records are secured." Then every screen in the ballroom suddenly went black. A second later, the fire alarm began screaming. Rachel checked her tablet. Someone is remotely wiping the foundation server. Grant turned toward the technical booth. "Stop it. We've been locked out." Amara looked at the Harbour Haven model. The red-roofed residence was blinking. Not decorative lights. A network indicator. She remembered something from the original program. Harbour Haven's first donor database had never been stored in an office. Amara had built it herself on an old computer because she did not trust outside administrators with women's private information. When the program expanded, she had insisted every new system maintain an offline emergency backup. "Grant." He looked at her. "The master archive isn't on the foundation server." Rachel frowned. "Where is it?" Amara pointed toward the model. "If they kept my original system architecture, the backup is stored at the first Harbour Haven building." Dorothy's eyes widened. "The church?" Amara nodded. Conrad went completely still. And that reaction told her everything. He knew. Felicity knew too. The server wipe was not meant to destroy the only evidence. It was meant to buy them enough time to reach the original church first. Amara picked up her torn invitation from the floor. "Call the police." Grant grabbed his coat. "Where are you going?" She looked at him. "To the place they thought I had forgotten." Then she looked directly at Conrad. The building where Harbor Haven actually began. The old church stood 6 blocks from the waterfront, squeezed between a laundromat and an abandoned office. Amara had not entered it in 11 years. This was where Harbor Haven had begun, with 37 folding cots, 2 working heaters, 1 bathroom, and a 24-year-old woman who had nowhere permanent to sleep herself. Grant watched her unlock the front door with the brass key Dorothy Bell had saved. "You really lived here? In the supply room? And still opened the place to everyone else?" Amara looked at him. "They needed somewhere safe. So did I." Inside, dust covered the wooden floor. The old piano remained against one wall, and faded marks on the floor showed where rows of cots had once stood. Rachel, Mason, Dorothy, and Grant followed Amara downstairs. The office looked almost unchanged. A blue filing cabinet still stood beside the wall. Rachel opened her laptop. "If the original Harbor Haven backup exists, we need it before Conrad reaches this building." Amara crouched near the wall. "When the shelter received its first major donation, somebody stole our computer. After that, I stopped trusting one storage location." She pulled the filing cabinet aside. Behind it was a steel lockbox. Its door had been drilled open. Empty. Grant's expression hardened. "Conrad already found it." Amara shook her head. "He found what I wanted thieves to find." Dorothy smiled. Grant looked at her. "You knew." Amara trusted desperate women more than wealthy administrators. Usually for good reason. Amara crossed to an old radiator and pulled a hidden metal ring beneath the pipe. A floor panel lifted. Inside sat a waterproof case. Rachel exhaled. Amara placed it on the desk. Inside were handwritten ledgers and a portable hard drive. Rachel connected the drive to an offline laptop. Hundreds of files appeared. Original donations. Property contracts. Board correspondence. And one folder. Dane Development. Rachel opened it. Conrad Dane had first approached Harbor Haven offering donated apartments. A year later, his company began charging rent. Then maintenance fees. Then security fees. Then renovation costs. Most of the properties were owned by companies connected directly to Conrad. Grant leaned closer. They were moving charitable donations back into Dane businesses. Rachel nodded. 4 years. How much? She calculated quickly. Over $27 million that we can prove immediately. Amara's face hardened. Harbor Haven had repeatedly claimed it could not afford additional beds. Women had been turned away. Meanwhile, money meant for them had been enriching Conrad. Another folder appeared. Audit, Melanie Voss. Amara frowned. Melanie was our financial controller. Rachel opened the final email. "I think they are using your name to authorize property transfers. Do not sign anything. I'm meeting a state investigator Friday." "What happened to her?" Grant asked. Dorothy answered quietly. "They told us she resigned." Amara turned. "She never contacted me." Rachel searched the payroll records. A $250,000 severance payment had supposedly been sent to Melanie. But the receiving company belonged to Conrad Dane. Grant's voice lowered. "They manufactured evidence that she left." Footsteps sounded above them. Mason immediately reached for his weapon. Someone slowly descended the basement stairs. It was an older man wearing a janitor's jacket. Dorothy gasped. "Thomas Bellamy?" Amara recognized the former church caretaker. "Thomas." He stared at her. "You came back." Mason lowered his weapon. Thomas saw the waterproof case. "You found one copy." "One?" Rachel asked. Thomas nodded. "Melanie made another before she disappeared." Amara stepped toward him. "You saw Melanie before she vanished?" "The night before." He pulled a small cassette recorder from his coat. "She gave me this." Amara pressed play. Static filled the room. Then a woman's voice. "If anyone hears this, the Harbor Haven property transfers are fraudulent. Conrad Dane ordered fake ownership documents created using Amara Cole's signature." Amara closed her eyes. Melanie continued. "Felicity Dane knows. I heard her tell her father to stop. Conrad said Harbor Haven was only phase 1. Grant looked at Amara. The recording continued. He wants the waterfront land beneath the shelters. Once residents are consolidated into the new campus, the original properties will be sold. Rachel immediately opened the new campus plan. Her expression changed. That's why they're building one huge facility. To empty the individual shelters, Amara said. Rachel checked current property values. 21 Harbor Haven properties together could be worth more than $600 million. Grant stared at the screen. The new campus had never been primarily about helping more women. It was a mechanism for clearing valuable land. Then Melanie's recording revealed something else. The original Harbor Haven charter requires the founder's handwritten approval before any permanent shelter-owned property can be sold. Rachel searched the charter. There. The clause was real. A permanent sale required Amara's signature witnessed by 2 original beneficiaries. Grant looked at her. That's why they forged the transfer agreement. If they could claim you surrendered founder status, they wouldn't need your approval. Amara finally understood why Felicity had been desperate to keep her outside the gala. Not because of the gown. Not even because of the old fraud. Because Amara was still the only legal obstacle between Conrad and hundreds of millions of dollars. Mason's phone buzzed. Conrad's SUV is approaching. 3 more vehicles followed. Grant stood. Police. 7 minutes away. Thomas pointed toward the rear wall. There's an old tunnel connecting the church to the boiler building. Rachel began packing the evidence. Before they could leave, headlights flooded the basement windows. A moment later, Felicity shouted from upstairs. Amara. Grant stopped. Don't let my father inside. A gunshot cracked through the church. Everyone ran upstairs. Felicity stumbled through the front doorway, blood running down one sleeve. Conrad entered behind her with 2 armed men. His eyes immediately found the waterproof case. There it is. Felicity stepped between him and Amara. Dad, stop. You had one job tonight. You told me nobody would get hurt. Conrad ignored her. Give me the archive, Amara. No. He raised a small remote. Thomas went pale. Conrad pressed a button. An explosion shook the basement. Smoke poured through the stairwell. Grant grabbed Amara. You rigged the church. Conrad smiled. I prepared for old evidence. Then Felicity looked at Amara. He isn't here for the archive. Conrad's expression changed. Felicity continued. The 21 Harbor Haven properties are being sold tonight. Rachel stared at her. When? Midnight. Grant checked his watch. 11:44. 16 minutes. Amara said, the sales require my signature. Felicity lowered her eyes. They have it. How? The invitation. Amara froze. When I tore it at the gala, I gave the signed half to my father's assistant. Everything suddenly made sense. The humiliation. The torn invitation. Keeping Amara outside. Felicity had not merely tried to embarrass her. She had stolen the one thing Conrad needed to complete the sale. Conrad smiled through the growing smoke. At midnight, Harbor Haven becomes history. Amara handed the evidence case to Rachel. Take everyone through the tunnel. Grant caught her arm. What are you doing? Amara looked at the clock. Stopping 21 shelters from being stolen. 15 minutes remained. Smoke rolled across the church ceiling as Amara ran toward the old office computer. Grant followed. You said everyone should leave. Everyone except the person whose signature they stole. Conrad raised the remote. You cannot stop the transfers. Your signature has already been authenticated. Amara opened the Harbor Haven charter on Rachel's laptop. The signature isn't enough. Conrad's smile faded. She pointed to the original clause. Every permanent property sale requires the founder's handwritten approval witnessed by 2 original beneficiaries. Dorothy stepped beside her. I'm one. Thomas looked toward the front door. And I know who the second is. He disappeared into the tunnel. Grant blocked Conrad from advancing while Mason kept the armed men at a distance. Felicity grabbed her father's wrist. "You've already lost." Conrad shoved her away. "You think helping her now erases what you did?" "No." Felicity steadied herself. "But I can stop doing it." The clock showed 11:51. Rachel connected to the property transfer portal using the church's emergency network. 21 transactions were queued. Each showed Amara's stolen signature. But beneath it, the witness section had also been completed. 2 names appeared: Dorothy Bell and Evelyn Shaw. Dorothy stared at the screen. Evelyn died 6 years ago. Amara looked at Conrad. "You forged a dead woman's witness signature." Conrad shrugged. "By the time anyone proves that, the properties will belong to private companies. Not if the real witness objects before midnight." The tunnel door opened. Thomas returned with an elderly black woman using a walker. Amara gasped. "Mrs. Hayes." Ruth Hayes had slept on the 3rd cot the first night Harbor Haven opened. She was 84 now. Thomas had found her living 2 blocks away. Ruth looked at the burning church and shook her head. "People still causing trouble over buildings we froze inside." Even Grant almost laughed. Rachel positioned the laptop. Dorothy and Ruth entered sworn digital objections to every transfer. The system flashed. "Founder verification required." Conrad lunged toward the computer. Grant caught him. Mason restrained one of the armed men while Felicity kicked the second man's weapon beneath a pew. Amara placed her hand on the signature pad. The system asked one question. "Do you authorize the sale of Harbor Haven properties?" She pressed. "No." Every transaction turned red. Transfer suspended. Fraud review initiated. 11:57. Conrad stared at the screen. "No." Rachel smiled. "Yes." Police burst through the church doors seconds later. Conrad tried to reach the tunnel, but officers surrounded him. The fire department entered behind them and contained the basement blaze before it reached the old archive room. The waterproof evidence case survived. So did the ledgers. So did Melanie Voss's recording. And so did the original Harbor Haven charter. Investigators later discovered Melanie had survived. She had entered witness protection after providing evidence against a Dane-connected official years earlier, but the investigation had been buried. This time, the evidence was public. Conrad Dane was charged with fraud, attempted arson, conspiracy, witness intimidation, illegal property transfers, and misuse of charitable funds. Several associates were arrested with him. Felicity admitted stealing Amara's signature and helping conceal Harbor Haven's true history. Her cooperation reduced her sentence, but it did not erase her responsibility. Her engagement to Grant ended permanently. The 21 properties remained with Harbor Haven. The planned private mansion inside the new campus was removed from the project. Months later, the new Harbor Haven opened under an independent board made up mostly of former residents. Amara refused to become its owner. Instead, she accepted the position of founding chair, with no power to sell property alone. Grant attended the opening quietly. No photographers stood beside him. When Amara approached, he smiled. "You were too embarrassing for the gala, apparently." She laughed. "Terrible mistake letting me inside. The best one Felicity ever made." Amara looked toward the women entering their new homes. "Harbor Haven was never mine." Grant followed her gaze. "No. It belonged to every woman who needed one safe door to open. And this time, nobody could close it behind them."